And I see, it's like Romper Room. Remember that show? And start, or we can give Chris another minute. It is only just 8:31. Mandy, as the vice chair, I'd say that's your call.
I got the impression Chris was going to attend, so I would give him 2 more minutes.
Okay. Oh, he's here? Oh, he's on the way in.
Morning,
There.
everybody.
Good morning.
All right, I think I've done this enough times. You think I know where the link to the
That's okay. I've been having trouble with the participants list this morning myself, so. Okay. Well, I think, Chris, we're ready whenever you're ready. So Kurt, you're ready?
Yep.
So if we're ready to get started, we can go ahead.
All right, this is Chris Cohart with the Special Alcohol Tax Advisory Committee, and we'll call the meeting to order. And the first item on our agenda is a presentation from our city manager about the city's strategic plan. And appreciate Craig to take the time to come speak with us and save any questions we might have, and allow Craig to do his thing. So,
Chair, this is Casey Toomey. Before we do that, we do have a member, Jeff Fry, who is on for the first time. I thought it might be helpful for Jeff to be able to meet all of you. So maybe we could just take a kind of a combination of roll call vote and introduction and go around, and you can each introduce yourself to Jeff. I think he said he's traveling, so I'm not sure that his camera is on, but if maybe you could just all take turns and introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Welcome, Jeff. Chris Cohart, chair of the committee.
There he is.
Not traveling for another 15 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Jeff, I am Mandy Enfield. I am in the United Way representative position on this board. And this is, I think, wrapping up my first year. It seems like much longer, but I think I've been on here for a year.
Maybe Dorothy?
I'm Dorothy Hoyt-Reed, and I'm a retired Spanish teacher. And this is just my second meeting, and I think I have to reapply because I just filled in a short position. So,
Yeah, we've met before, Dorothy.
oh, okay.
Over there in North Lawrence.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We had the barbecue shop at the other end of the.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, coming back to me now.
Yeah. Well, we're not getting any better retention in these days.
And then Kimberly?
Good morning. I'm Kim Johnson. I have served on the committee for maybe 4 months. Shake a stick at left or right on the month side. And I am on the board of the Boys and Girls Club, and I work for the University of Kansas Medical Center. Nice to meet you, Jeff.
My pleasure, Kimberly.
And I think that's everybody. Jeff, I don't know if you want to give us an introduction to yourself.
My name's Jeff Fry. I've been in Lawrence with my family for 30 years, where we raised our 3 children. I've been a business owner in different capacities in Lawrence pretty much most of that time, and now am partners in a lobbying firm that lobbies strictly on liberty issues. We were one of the leaders of medical marijuana legislation that's being politically batted around out there, as well as a number of different choices to expand people's freedoms here in the state and less involvement with government. Sorry about the government thing, but here I am serving our community and the government, but it's not really anything with you guys. Property taxes at the state level, those kind of things.
Well, welcome to the board. Okay, thank
you
you for taking the time to do that. Sorry, Craig. I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thanks. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see some of you and meet some of you for the first time. My name's Craig Owens. I just passed 3 years as the city manager here in Lawrence, and it's been an honor being here. A strange 3 years, obviously, but wherever I would have been, it would have been strange, I'm sure. So what I've been trying to do over the last few months is really just meet with these volunteer boards and commissions and just kind of give you an orientation to the strategic plan that we've worked as a community to build over the last couple of years, and kind of just give you some insight into it, and hopefully see how it works and how it can help your work, and then answer any questions that you might have. So I'll move through pretty rapidly, but please stop me if there's any questions, and then we can chat after that. And thank you for letting me be on the agenda. I will try and use that time respectfully. So when I first arrived, there was a strategic plan in place that really was less of a strategic plan, more of a kind of a, we'd like to do these things too. And it was built mainly from our elected body, the city commission. And these are some next things we'd like to do, which is a good start, but it really didn't talk about what are we all in business to do? What are we trying to achieve as a community? And so it was the things on top of everything else that we have always done. And so when we undertook an update or rewrite of the strategic plan, there were some foundational things that were important to us. First of all, it needed to be the community strategic plan. So it needed to be built on listening to the community. So we set out a listening session with, I asked for volunteers within city employment and employees, and hope that we get 20 people that help us go listen. And I actually was really excited that we had 50 volunteers, 50 different people from around our organization, all different levels, all different departments, and really representing the community pretty well, because most live here and are part of this community. So I was really excited to have this large group of people. And we gave basic training on, how do you listen? How do you hear people? How do you make space for different people, whether it's a facilitated or it's just a conversation at a table. And so we went through that process, and then we said, hey, we want you to go out and get invited to where people are already gathering in this community and talking about their dreams and expectations for what we do. We were good. We were intentional and reached out to as many established organizations that we could find that we knew about, particularly concentrating on those that don't usually get asked their opinion. And we're very intentional about trying to push to go to those places and access those opinions and ideas and dreams. So through that process, we had about 3,000 people in this community participate and give us those ideas. So we gathered all of this data from the community, and we kind of digested it and organized it and tried to make sense of it in different groupings. And we identified 5 different outcome areas. Casey, I'm going to share my screen.
Okay, you should be able to.
Okay, so we created the strategic plan framework, and there's a couple of features of this. One is that it has 5 different areas. We kind of curated the information that we had gotten from the community and organized it into 5 different outcome areas. And outcomes are an important piece of strategic planning because it identifies not what you do, but where you go, where you intend to go, and then how you get there, a results or an outcome or a change that you intend to see. So these 5 different outcome areas were identified: unmistakable identity, strong, welcoming neighborhoods, safe and secure, prosperity and economic security, and connected city. So that's how we organized all the different things that people said, this is what we expect from you as the city, or this is what we want from our community. and we expect the city to be helping us do that. What was challenging about this, but much better, was we also said and heard from the community, how you do what you do is as important as what you do. And so we established these 6 commitment areas. And those are community engagement, efficient and effective processes, equity and inclusion, sound fiscal stewardship, engaged and empowered teams, and environmental sustainability. So we have to hold ourselves accountable as we do this very challenging work of the outcomes, to making sure that when we're moving forward, we move forward respecting and balancing the 6 different commitment areas, and we actually measure those. We try to have measures, and I'll show you some measures here in a little bit. So this makes it harder. It's much more complicated because if we just use kind of the traditional ones of just spend as little as possible, which is one that people go to frequently, then we haven't really necessarily gotten good value. We just spent little. So all of these need to be in balance. If you have, you don't spend very much, and the people that you're asking to do the work aren't paid adequately or fairly, you're not going to get results either. So, each of these is important. If you don't stay a listening organization to the community, then you let that one go, then eventually that catches up with you either. So it's harder. This way is harder, and the strategic plan makes it more difficult, but it will make it more sustainable and useful as the years and decades go by. Even if we change what we're trying to get done, the framework itself can be a very useful document to make sure that the community continues to move in the direction it wants to go, but doesn't leave behind parts of the community or essential values that are part of that. So that was the framework that we built. Now, behind each of these really pretty little pieces on here on our website, we placed, we built a lot of key performance indicators. So you'll see the way these are situated is each of them are kind of cross-referenced between a commitment area and an outcome area. So they overlap. So you can see all of the commitment key performance indicators across the outcomes, or you can see all of the outcome areas, in each one of them has a relative cross-section to the commitment areas. So for instance, this is an area that's in strong, welcoming neighborhoods. It's an outcome area, and you see progress indicators. These are commitment area community engagement. So within strong, welcoming neighborhoods, the community engagement measure is percent of residents who perceive the city as a good or very good place to live. Okay, pretty broad, but we thought that was the best indicator of success where we do those things. So we set a target, and now we'll be developing strategies to achieve results and move progress forward in this area. We have those for all of the different commitments within strong, welcoming neighborhoods. So this is all on the website. It's for you. It helps all of us know where we intend to go together, and helps us have conversations about adjustments that should be made. But hopefully it's a useful framework that helps us do things even as we adjust it over time. So in a nutshell, that's what I wanted to share with you. The process over the next few years will be to try and continuously align our resources, our strategies, our expenditures to achieve these results, and to do feedback loops and say, hey, do we need to make some adjustments, or the things that need to change maybe to get different results. This isn't working, let's try something else, or this is working really well, maybe we need to focus in another area. So that's what this tool is built to do, and hopefully, especially with volunteer boards and commission members who are doing this all day, every day, like Casey and myself and others on the team, it's something you can check back in on, and and use as a reference as well. So with that, I will stop sharing and happy to answer any questions.
This is Chris Cohort. Thanks for the presentation and update, Craig. How often are you updating the progress indicators there?
It depends on which ones they are. You can see, well, you'll see that we use ETC. It's an Olathe-based company, but they do survey work around the country for municipalities and others, but mostly municipalities or local governments. And they will be given, they do an annual survey, which is actually finished its field work, and now they're pulling together the data. But you'll see that community survey is an indicator that will be updated annually. But there's some of these that can be where the data is going to be more available, maybe even weekly, quarterly, monthly, something like that, or we might update them more frequently if the data is available and conducive to regular updates.
This is Kim Johnson, and I appreciate your summary. I'm afraid I don't believe it answered the question. So when do you expect will it update? And if it will update, how often will it update?
Each of these data points has kind of its own schedule. We will be looking at it whenever that we get new data. We want to put it in and say, this is the most recent, this is where we are. Much of this is annual. Now, there are lead indicators that we will be looking at throughout the organization that aren't on this scorecard. We've probably got 70 or 80 that are on the scorecard, which is a lot. But there are lead indicators that we bet that if we do make progress in this area, it's going to affect our outcome area or these key performance indicators. And so we have a lot more data besides this that our organization looks at regularly. But it just depends on which the data point is. The annual community survey is one that I mentioned because that is seen across a lot of the outcome areas as the community engagement indicator. But there may be some others that they can update more frequently.
And have they notified you of, or did you write into your agreement with them when updates would come through, just so that the public in general could see those updates? Like, is it an agreement that you'll get your goal is to provide those updates annually or biannually, or is it just as they arrive?
What agreement are you talking about?
Utilizing a company to analyze and gather this information, correct?
ETC is just doing a community survey. So we've done it here before. We've done it twice recently. Last year, I think, or a year and a half ago, and then it was done in maybe 2015. So those are on your website. You can find those. But this is an annual snapshot survey. It's not an ongoing one. Okay. Maybe someday we'll get to that place where we can do, fluid surveys. We can do on-demand surveys. But for this, it's a snapshot. So they grab a statistically valid sample size, and then we do that. One thing I will mention, you also see on this survey stuff, we commissioned them, we paid more to oversample so that we got enough data to grab marginalized populations and minority groups. We could pull reliable data from that, which we hadn't done before. So we wanted to make sure that that's an important one, and that's in not just in community engagement, but that's also in our equity and inclusion commitment area too. So that's an indicator there as well.
And I asked that because you had referenced that company. So a question I have is in relationship to that is that data obviously overlaps with information that the government pulls and CDC pulls in the behavioral risk surveillance system, so the BRFSS. I'm curious why you don't use that national data provided by zip code and pay an outside agency to do it.
Well, I just say take a look at it. The questions that it answers are, yes, we want to use other data sources as well. I'm just saying that this one measures, and I'll be happy to see if there's something that does it for free. I am all in on that, always. But what this asks is, as a Lawrence community member, how do you like your police services? How do you like your roads and streets? How do you like your north-south roads and streets? How do you like your east-west roads and streets? So if your federal data provides that similar information, I'm all in, but I don't think it does. And the other thing is this company and a couple others around the country, because they survey cities all around, so then we can get relative comparative data so that I can see, for instance, I always say, the worst performing fire department is going to rate higher than the best performing code enforcement department because they just are in different businesses. And there aren't too many TV shows about code enforcement heroes, even though they are. So we like to have that relativity in the data set. But if you have something that does something similar, my goodness, I would love to have that. I haven't been able to find that. I don't think they'd make much money as companies if we get stuff for free.
Kim, hey Kim.
Yes.
You know more about this BRFSS than I do, but isn't it a website with really hard data about drug and alcohol use, mental health, and needs? So it would be like a pretty accurate representation of our community needs in those specific areas. Am I right in that?
Correct.
Okay. So it would be a really good reference point for hard data versus preferential feedback.
Correct. And yes, that is correct.
Thanks.
This is
And it
Dorothy.
would
I just
specific.
have one more question, Dorothy. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
I will be done. Sorry. And Craig, thank you for answering those questions. I do have a lot of additional questions around that, right? Because ideally, shouldn't our city be able to provide that feedback because we all drive on the same roads? So your employees should be able to provide that feedback in a pretty timely manner. Just sidebar. On the road side, I was in my mind was on roads there for a hot minute. But thank you for answering that. So my final question that I have for you is, can you tell me, what does the term advisory board mean to you?
Well, as within the context of what you all provide, you're advisors to the city commission. So we have 48 boards and commissions and appointed by the city commission. And so they're asking community volunteers basically to give them advice on policy matters. And each of them has definitions, but I'd say that's my general understanding. Okay.
And I ask that because in my mind, an advisory board is a decision, the goal is to make evolving decisions. And an advisory board is there to assist and give feedback on those evolving decisions. And the advisory board's pulled from all over, right? Just like the group you're paying in Eudora. They're gathering data to they you gather these people that are from different backgrounds and, that have different impacts within your city. And you're asking them for advice to make decisions.
Yeah.
Would you agree to that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I appreciate it. Okay, Dorothy, I am solidly done.
Okay. Well, this is Dorothy Hoyt Reed, and I was just asking what other sources, is this survey the only thing that you use to measure these improvements or attitudes?
No, No, I just use that as the example, and now we've talked about it way too much. It's only one of the overlaps of 70 or 80 measures. So if I just encourage you to go poke around on the site, so you'll see there's some highly technical stuff that is in our municipal services and operations that talks about, water quality and clarity, the environmental sustainability approach to delivering those services. There's urban planning things about how close people are to, walking paths and bike paths, and, how many people live close to, other community assets and amenities, which will be, aspirational. It's all over the board, because what we're being asked to do is widely diverse. And so building the key performance indicators, not the only performance indicators, but the key performance indicators. We had a long set of discussions on those, in saying, what are the key performance indicators? So if we really want to see one particular needle move, what's the best one that matches up the best? And in some cases, there's little orange cones that says under construction, because we think we know the best indicator of success or movement, but we don't have the data yet. So we're doing the process to get the systems in place so that we can gather that data.
This is Kim Johnson, and I just want to add one final comment is, as a brown woman in America, I don't think we talk about anything way too much.
Oh, I meant
That's how we learn. No, I'm just
Sure.
saying that I appreciate that, what I learn in my world, and we all go 100 miles an hour for multiple hours of a day, right? But what I've learned in my world is that what I know in my world, I'm like, oh my God, I got to talk about this again. But what I learned from other people's world is, oh, that's interesting. I've got some questions. And questions is what engages growth, and questions is what empowers advisory committees.
Sure. Thank you for that. I was being critical of myself for introducing it without the other things, but I thank you for that perspective. That's very helpful.
So, Craig, I'm interested in how our feedback from the annual report that we shared with the commission, I hope you read it, that talks a lot about transparency was sort of the focus of our feedback, not necessarily specific to the strategic plan. Could you talk about how your strategic plan process and how you assess the value of these different things using your quartiles or whatever, worksheets or matrices you use internally? Could you talk about how that helps address our questions around transparency? And I want to put a little context with that in, I have spent a lot of time poking through the strategic plan stuff online, and I've gone through and even, crunched, fairly inaccurate numbers, I'm sure, and looked at a lot of the questions. So something that really stuck out to me is homelessness is a word that comes up in the survey over and over again. There are specific questions asking the public about what if they think that's an important issue to address. But as somebody who talks about the vast needs of our community, that there are thousands of other equal pieces that aren't specifically referenced in the survey. So how does the city reconcile when you give feedback on the value of things? Well, people told us they value the city, investing in homelessness solutions. We know that the public said that, and they didn't say this. When the survey specifically asks about homelessness, but does not specifically ask about any of the other services that are being defunded in service of the homelessness situation. So just to go back, my question is around the transparency in the process and how you reconcile what's gone on with these funds with the justification of the strategic plan. Does that make sense? Is it too much?
It was a lot, but because I've listened to when you visited with us the other evening, and I read your work, I think I can get the context of it. And I know you'll steer me back if I'm off. So, but there's several things there. First, I would say it isn't my strategic plan, it's our strategic plan. This is adopted by the city commission. We were asked to do this work and put this, go gather data and information and try and pull it all together. We engage the community as broadly as I think any effort has been. At least the national consultant that was helping us on this had never seen this level of outreach. So we didn't, and those are open-ended. So the foundation was engaging very deeply as much as we could, people that just open-ended questions, tell us what's important to you, what do you need? What do you want the city to do? And so if we asked questions that were on follow-up surveys, it was from the foundational basis of this is what we heard we were expected and in business to do. So I'd say that was the first part. There are things that are important that happen in a community, no question, that need to happen, that happen with other institutions, other organizations, and not in just this community and community. So what my job is to do the stuff the city is being asked to do. And the city commission gives that guidance and direction. And by adopting a strategic plan based on that listening part, it does define what we are supposed to be doing and what we're being held accountable for in the community, sometimes exclusively. Sometimes we're in shared space. And that's my observation. There's a lot of shared space. The city and county, though, have different charter functions, are in a lot of shared space, or a fair amount of shared space. And that's fine. It's just who's accountable for which piece. The school district certainly isn't similar. They have pretty well-defined space, which is really challenging for them in the current circumstances, but those are things that are there. The hospital, the university, Haskell, everybody, all these institutions that are vital and critical have roles to play. So this strategic plan is very intentionally defining our roles, defining what we're held accountable by stakeholders for. And that had not been done. As far as I can tell in our research and background, that had not existed in this community before. And I would say it's reported that we didn't even have a capital improvement plan until about 6-7 years ago. So that's was very surprising to learn, considering the size of this city and the complexity of our infrastructure and the demands that the community has for vital services. So we're trying to be really good at what we intend to provide. And that's what a strategic plan can do. I would also say when you're going from nothing, no strategic alignment comprehensively, to this, it's going to take years for us to adjust to those things. And so to go more directly to what you're holding us accountable for, I would say, part of the adjustment was the communication of change, the expectation of, now we're doing things with these goals in mind, very specifically and intentionally. And as we align, this is what we're saying yes to, we will run out of resources to do a lot of other things that we haven't been necessarily held accountable for. And we're not being asked to do as directly as other places are. So I think that, this isn't the only place where where we were, when I say we, from a staff side, we were clumsy in making proposals of how do we make this change happen. And it continues, the budget process, which has been very difficult because it's trying to align to what we said we're in business to do, if you will. And as we do that work together, It is definitely disruptive to some pieces. But if we don't have a strategy and we don't say with clarity what we are intending to do, and I'd say these key performance indicators give a level of clarity that has never, ever existed. Now, there's really great studies that I've seen where on specific pieces, like a food system policy. I mean, wow, really great stuff that has clear strategies and is trying to move things forward. There's things like that that exist in the community, but it is not showing what is the city going to be held accountable for, and what's the process of getting improvement in those areas that are vitally important, instead of just kind of, we do everything we can for everything, every place, every direction. And I think that's some of what the adjustment will be. So, I apologize. I hear what you wrote and what you shared. We're in this, the staff, the city commission, all the volunteer boards and commission members, all the community stakeholders are all trying to get to a better place. The strategic plan does so many things. The budget that I proposed does so many great things and does fund positive things. But as somebody said in the hearing the other night, we were talking a lot about the whole of the donut, not the donut itself. And that's probably an indication of change and adjustment. And it's not perfect. It needs to continue to be evolving. We need to act experimentally, and we have been, but it has, it will always come at some kind of cost. And we try to be very measured and sensitive to where that is, but it's not always going to be perfect.
I appreciate that. Could you help me understand like specifically, in the survey, it specifically speaks to some like keywords like homelessness or this or that in the strategic plan feedback surveys. But there's, thousands of things that it does not specifically reference. So then the city has to use the process that you have, like the matrices or quartiles or whatever it is, to assess how these specific items would fit into the strategic plan and therefore be justified in the budget. So could you give me an example of like how that would work for an item that is funded that maybe isn't referenced in the strategic plan or survey specifically?
I want to make sure we're talking about the same survey. Which survey are you talking about?
That the Olathe group put out, all the survey data that was collected for the strategic plan. There were like feedback sessions with people, and then there was the online survey where that got the most feedback, where community members filled out a survey online.
Okay. Yes, I mean, there's one in the field that hasn't been released yet. So I don't know whether that one.
This is from over a year ago.
Okay.
Not the newest process.
Okay. Okay, so I want to
like say the Humane Society, that's a hot topic, or like how do you I've heard you say the public has told us this isn't a priority, or the public didn't tell us this was a priority. I've heard that in conversations and commission meetings. So when something isn't specifically in the survey or specifically asked about, what's the process that the city staff uses? What's the matrice? What's the quartiles that I read quartiles? Like how do you guys do that?
Sure. Well, Casey's the better person to answer. Priority-based budgeting is what we're talking about, I think, here. Mm-hmm. And also I want to just out of respect from the learning that I received earlier, I want to let you know the community survey is one factor. Mm-hmm. We have, as I said, if we only did what's popular, that would not be responsible. Okay. I'm not saying that we don't like to be popular, but I am saying that if we only went with the winds of change and we ignored financial data, which are good indicators of a certain reality that we have, then that's a piece. we can't ignore how our, 888 people that, I'm honored to lead, how they are supported and feel engaged with their work. So we measure that too. And that might not match up with something they were asking the community survey for. So those are also data points. Each of those 6 commitment areas we intend to measure. Equity and inclusion. That's another piece. If we only went with the popular majority, we wouldn't be serving everybody we need to serve. So we are trying to listen in complicated ways. So that's why that was my bad attempt at saying before, we're talking about one piece. And I want to make sure that you come away with it understanding the complexity of our measurement devices. Likewise, process, there's technical indicators of performance, like road condition as measured by engineering indexes that describe the pavement condition. There's a lot of technical stuff on the pipes that are buried underground and the systems that go there, that if we ignored those and just said where it's, and that's what we did, by the way, is I don't see it. My toilet still flushes. I want to pay as little as possible. And so when you just go to the popular one and you only use that data set, you neglect things that are unseen. And so I want to make sure that I've communicated.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah, okay. I'm not in support of the survey process. So yeah, I 100% agree with that. Hard data.
And you can't ignore the community's expectation.
You can't ignore it, but you also can't like pick and choose which one we use to justify decisions. So that's what I want to know, like how that works. Are those the quartiles, like the public opinion, the staff, like what are these quartiles?
I'm going to toss to Casey to talk about priority-based budgeting, which we've also been implementing on top of a lot of other changes that we're doing. And it is really good practice, but through the process of change, it's hard.
And the word priority references the strategic plan, right? Like that's how they connect. Okay.
And just another throw in before Casey kind of takes us through that. I want the shift to strategic planning is also a shift to proactivity. It's a shift of proactivity. Okay, it's not, which has not been done. We have been reactive to things that come up, reactive to a great idea, reactive to a crisis, reactive to a pandemic. You have to be somewhat reactive. In my observations coming here from faraway places, there wasn't any plan for proactively moving us intentionally, no theory of change to get us to a place where we'd like to be as we discuss it. This does that, and that is a huge paradigm shift that is going to be, it's not going to be natural for many people who've lived their whole lives here in this community and have certain expectations about the way things should be done or the way things have always been done. So I would say that's also a piece to just acknowledge, which again, we probably haven't communicated or acknowledged nearly enough as a result of some of the tension, confusion, disappointment that has been communicated to us recently.
I think, I don't know everybody in this group, but certainly Kim and Chris would, in their profession, focus on proactive work and can appreciate that and understand it. So it's not a concept that we don't support.
This is Chris Gilbert. Would it be, Mandy, would you mind? I want to talk about priority-based budgeting. We do have an agenda item for the 2023 budget update, and maybe let Casey speak to the priority-based budgeting at that point in time. And then maybe if we have any further questions for Craig, we can do that. We do have some more agenda items that we have to get through today. I want to make sure we're respecting everybody's time. I know I have a hard out at 10, so, and I think Casey does as well. So if we have any further questions for Craig, let's get those taken care of, and then we'll move on to other agenda items.
And if I may, I'm available to you all. You volunteer your time, so I'm happy to have deeper conversations offline with any of you at any time. So appreciate that.
I think as it relates to this, Chris Carr, as it relates to this advisory board, two questions I suppose we have is from a general perspective on 2023, and I know Casey can get into this a little bit further, but the expectation of funding stream of this alcohol tax would be very similar to the 2022, how we handled that. So the advisory that we would have and making recommendations to the city for 2023 budget would be very similar to the 2022 budget. Is that fair expectation?
Is that to me? I
Yeah.
think so. Casey might have similar thoughts.
No, I think that you said it, Chris, that the recommended budget for 2023 assumes the use of the alcohol tax will be the same as it was in 2022. So,
okay, and as with that in mind, we've spoken at several meetings and had further discussions, kind of what the future role of this board is, and we know what an advisory board, what the resolution and the ordinance say that we're responsible for. So. Our role is somewhat diminished in this point with the way that we're doing the funding of this, that revenue. And so how do you see the role of this board for 2023, at least through this budget process? There's a lot of willing participants here, and we talked about how we can participate in this process, but we don't always get to see how the sausage is being made a lot of times. So we don't quite always know where we can fit into that puzzle to be of value and put our volunteer time to assist in whatever way possible.
Yeah, so I can share, Craig Owens, city manager, I can share that this is the same conversation I've had with the other boards and commissions that I've visited. Many meet more frequently, so it's just taken a while to get to you all, and I apologize for that. But the reason I'm sharing all of this, and on really behalf of the city commission, is this is their plan. This is what they want to be great at, and they want help from you all, their trusted advisors. They want help on their top priorities. So that's really why I'm sharing this, so that you all can look at this and say, hey, I have an idea. Or did you see what this data trend did? Or we're hearing things in the community we need to react to, and I want to make sure that you're seeing this in the work that we're doing, the proactive work that we're doing, the plans that we're building. So you have a very narrow assignment as a board, and I don't know history or reason for that. It's a guess is that when you don't have a strategic plan at all, and you don't know where you're going to go, and you haven't had direction from the elected leadership, then you have to do the proactive work. You have to plan a year at a time. And so I do think that probably is part of what you just asked me. But all the boards and commissions are really being asked, help us with this work. There's a lot of policy work that needs to be done. And that can be benefited from the perspectives of the people that have been appointed by the city commission to advise them on policy, and hopefully in tandem with and in partnership with the professional staff that are trying to do the same work. We really should be all doing the same work and have agreement on that. And I think the strategic plan as the pronouncement of the work is useful in that respect. And I think that, you're meeting occasionally and bringing your expertise and perspectives in can help enrich our plans, and especially in the strategies around policy.
This is Kim Johnson, and I appreciate that feedback. I think my question and or concern is, since I've been on this committee, and it's been a short window, but it appears that the left hand and right hand, though they look similar, are not communicating with each other, and that the process for the previous year left out a significant amount of communication with prior organizations that were highly impacted by the changes to FY, and not FY, but in 2022. And it impacted them pretty significantly, right? If it wasn't for the CARES Act, for some, they would have not been able to serve the same population that your survey evaluated had needs. And some of those individuals are still struggling. They did not get additional funding. So I guess my question is as advisory committee, we brought those topics up going, hey guys, left hand, right hand, not talking. This is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
How do you see that changing in 2023?
Well, in this period of time, I wrote up on my board so I could see it all the time. I'm looking at it. Clear as kind. Somebody shared that with me, and it's been useful to me. And I think that's what I kept saying to myself as I read your letter to the City Commission. So I do think that we're being more clear now, and there are other places where change is happening. It's not just here. And again, we need lots of things to go well in this community. That we're reliant on other agencies, other institutions to be successful. We're dependent on them, and they're dependent on us to be successful in what we do. But we acknowledge that. I think the communication was obviously poor, because people, if anybody feels that it was poor, it was poor. Largely, we're responsible, acknowledge I can't remember how you said it in the letter, but the uneven power dynamic, absolutely agree, understand that. I think we're trying to be very clear that this budget is like the last budget, in that we've picked an area of emphasis that we believe is very, very clearly aligned with the strategic plan. And these funds absolutely help do that work. And as the City Commission has received and adopted last year's budget and received this year's budget that shows that plan, that is, our very clear pronouncement to the community that this is the direction that we're headed, and it is part of an alignment. The past, we should have been clearer on that, and we should have, and you acknowledge that. You said it very eloquently in the letter that you sent, and I won't try and restate it, but I will acknowledge and responsibility for that poor communication.
Craig, in the spirit of clear is kind, I heard you talk about, everyone has their different roles, the county, the city, the university, so on. Since probably late 2018, I've heard conversations about the county should be responsible for social service funding. And all actions indicate that that is the city's position, but I've never heard the city just state that that is the goal and the policy. So would you tell us, is that the plan for the county to take responsibility for all social service funding, and the city will not engage with that anymore?
It's not my job to do that. That's the City Commission's ultimate, and I don't think that you can. I think it's just that's too distilled to say accurately yes or no. Mm-hmm. I understand what you're saying. I think these are shifts and movements. They're not complete switch on, switch off sort of things. And what I do know in my 3 years being here and in having some really useful conversations with my counterpart and others at the county, I do think there's an awareness of we can't both be in both spaces and not have a clarity of who's doing what, so that we spend the community's resources most efficiently, effectively. We get the most, the housing study, the homelessness, houselessness study that we commissioned, that they commissioned, paid for, but we participated in, is a real good example of that, where it's saying these are all of the pieces that are interconnected. And now, and if you listen to the joint city-county conversation on that, I think it was pretty clear that all of the elected leadership that spoke there that night really are acknowledging, hey, we're going to take this space more and you take that space more. And they kind of had this agreement. It was a good conversation, I thought.
I only watched the beginning of that. Where did anybody specifically state which spaces they were taking?
In this, it was generally the supported housing.
Okay, just with housing and homelessness. Okay.
Yes. So, but it's a good example, again, of, I think, acknowledgement that if we all try and do everything and aren't coordinated, we aren't going to be successful.
I get that.
Anything.
I get that. So, but with, clear is kind. And we've talked about power dynamics with these social service agencies who were, their process of accessing community dollars is gone. There's no process for them to access the funds. They have no power to advocate for themselves because of power dynamics. So if the city won't say yes or no that they have an opportunity to pursue funding, we haven't made any progress in what we brought up in our report is not addressed in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I have. So the last two budgets that I've proposed do not have a grant program in them the way it has been done in the past. That's as clear as I can be. I think the letter I sent to all of those agencies did say that, but all the other references that you held us accountable for from various other people that were going over the past, years, but short horizon, they were all with good intent, trying to say, I think this maybe is possible, but not wanting to be clear, and probably not having authority to be clear.
So moving forward, are these agencies going to be told that they maybe could get funding or they maybe can't get funding? We don't know. It's to be determined. Is that the messaging again this year? Or are they going to be told we will not fund social services outside of the budget process?
Well, I don't think we've ever funded them outside of the budget process.
That's what they were told last year, that they could possibly get funded outside of the budget process. So that's why they were not able to push back against the budget process, because it would hurt their opportunity to get funds in the future. That was the dangling carrot. That's the power dynamics.
Okay. Well, right. My budget proposes the expenditure of the funds that you oversee, which I don't believe in the definition that the only monies we spend on social services are just the ones that come out of the special alcohol fund. That's why that's the only stipulation I would make. I think we do a lot of social service funding. Some of it staff delivered.
Okay.
But as far as, is there going to be a grant program? I'm not recommending that, but if we got federal funds or some other thing, that we would absolutely seek those agencies that are already in businesses to help support them.
Okay. Chris, we need to get back on track, right?
Yep. I think we can do, if there's no further questions for Craig, I think we can thank Craig for the time and the presentation.
I'm sorry, Kim Johnson, can I ask one more question? When do you intend to send the letter to the agencies, just so that they know and they can plan? You're not going to get any money letter.
Well,
sorry, I just thought that was a good question.
So I've laid out the budget that it is a letter to the whole community of this is what we're funding and how we're funding it. Last year, obviously, we acknowledged that there had been a change from the previous year. This year, I'm not recommending that there's much of a change as it relates to some of the agencies that got money through the special alcohol tax grant program. I can send another letter that looks like the one I did to the same recipient agencies, previously recipient agencies, if that is your advice. I would be happy to do that. This is, we're trying to be clear, and if that's useful, we will absolutely do that. I do think that some of our team did meet with some of those agencies last year. That's what I was told. That we would be open to meeting with any of those agencies as well. What we're trying to do is we're inviting the community to engage in what we said we want to do. And there's lots of room for people to help with that. If there are ideas.
I appreciate that. I do. And I don't think that and not to interrupt, but I feel like I hear you. I understand you. And what was missing from last year was clarity. Thus, you want to proceed with 2023, and you want all of those agencies to know the same thing, but the letter was missing clarity. So my question is just simply, will you send a clearer letter to all these agencies? I support that your choice is to fund this, right? Okay, I support that. But all of these other people that didn't get the funding, and there's this, dangler going, yeah, maybe you will, maybe. Well, that lack of clarity from the past hasn't been resolved. Working with Boys and Girls Club, I saw all of the stuff that came through, and it was very unclear. They even received another email recently asking them, what did you use your money on? And they're like, I didn't get any money. Thus, the lack of communication internally in your team and clarity. Yeah. So I'm asking you, Craig, don't you think that maybe it's a best idea to be clear in reflection of what is on your board?
Sure.
And it can be concise, right? It doesn't have to have a lot of words. I believe sometimes too many words create a lot of havoc for people. But something as simple as our funding is going in a new direction and your organization will no longer be available to receive these funds. Period. For year 2023, right?
Sure.
I will stop now.
This is Chris. I know the budget process is not complete at this point in time. It's not the recommendation of city manager at this point in time to do it. So I think as it relates to, I don't disagree with you, Kim, that's probably a great thing to say, that since we're still in a transition, and maybe that's a recommendation that we as a board can do as we're trying to find where our role is. And we can make a recommendation either on our agenda item 3 or 5 about possibly doing that at the end of the budget process for the city commission. Because right now the city commission could change what the proposed budget is, and make a recommendation to allocate some funds to this advisory board to make recommendations. What I don't think that's the direction that we have, but right now it's probably a premature letter to be sent out until the budget process is fully complete.
This is Kim Johnson, and just to reiterate, I did not put a timeline on the letter. I asked if a letter was going to be sent. That would imply the letter would be sent upon completion of the decisions. It did not imply the letter would be sent immediately. And the reason I wanted to confirm the importance of a letter is to be very direct. Boys and Girls Club received an email in the last 3 weeks asking how they used their money last year that they didn't get. So obviously that letter needs to be on the forefront of everyone's mind. Clarity needs to be on the front of everyone's mind, and conciseness in delivery of communication. Is that going to be done at some time in the future? Well, of course. The final conclusion of the budget, of course. But I want to make sure that this letter is still recognized as an important delivery tool to communicate to those what your final decision is.
This is Chris Carl. Fair point. All right. I think we do need to move on. We have more agenda items that we need to do. And I don't want to cut anybody off at this point in time, but
I do want to, can I say one more thing to Craig? Not a question, no feedback or response. The OpenGov portal shows for this budget year, 2.9 million for social services and $0 for homelessness. I think that is deceptive. And when the 2023 budget is approved, I think it's really important that you do not communicate on the OpenGov portal that you are funding social services when you are not. It needs to be accurately recorded. Okay, move on.
Okay, no more questions at this point in time. No more comments as it relates to this. We do need to move on.
Can I just say thank you?
Yes.
Thanks.
Greg, we appreciate your time and being open to answer questions. And yeah, we appreciate your time as it relates to the strategic plan and the questions.
And yours. Thank you all.
All right, so no action is necessary as it relates to this. We don't have to accept it or anything of that nature. So we're moving on to agenda item 2, which is approve the minutes from the April 22nd meeting. Did anybody have any changes that were needed? Did they see any changes to the minutes as they're prepared? Hearing none, I look for a motion to approve.
This is Dorothy. I so move.
Do you have a second?
Kim Johnson, second.
We have a motion and a second, and take it to a vote. Dorothy, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mandy?
Aye.
Kim?
Aye.
And our newest member, Jeff?
Aye, please.
And this is Chris Goward. I vote aye. So that motion passes. The approval of the minutes from the April 22nd meeting. All right, now on to the 2020 agenda item 3, which is a 2023 budget process update. I'm going to appreciate if we could circle back to Mandy's question about the priority-based budgeting, and keeping in mind we do have a kind of for the committee, we do have a 10 o'clock hard stop on this. So a couple of other items to get through today too.
I'll try to be brief. Go ahead.
And I'll just say, in the interest of time, I think like an overview, a broad overview isn't necessary. I think we all get the gist of it. I'm just interested in the quartiles, matrices, whatever it is I've heard referenced. If anyone else wants to hear about that.
Okay, so the priority-based budgeting is a methodology that we have been using for several years here at the city to try to work towards aligning the dollars that we spend with the city's strategic plan. We work with a consultant firm called Resource X, who has developed this methodology and worked with communities all over the country. It's a best practice recognized by the Government Finance Officers Association and the International City and County Managers Association. It is a process where cities identify the services that they provide, and those are referred to as programs. So an example of a program would be budget administration, or an example of a program might be police patrol services. The golf course is a program. Those are all examples of programs. After those programs are identified, we go through a process of cost allocating all of the dollars that we spend to those various programs. We do it with personnel. So we say how much of X person's time is spent on which programs, down to every individual employee, so that the cost of that person's time is allocated to the work that they are doing on behalf of the city. We also do it with our non-personnel expenses. So how much of the line item for office supplies supports this program? How much capital equipment supports this program? To try to come up with the cost of providing a particular program in the interest of being transparent for the community. Once that work is done, then we use a matrix that uses the strategic plan, the outcomes, and the commitments. And those all programs are scored by the department that provides that program first. Then they're peer reviewed. So, for example, we have a peer review team that is cross-departmental, look at all of the programs across all of the departments for fiscal stewardship. We have all of the programs looked at by a peer review team for the commitment to community engagement. Scores are developed for each one of those different criteria. And then there's a reconciliation between the score that the department originally provided and the peer review score. An ultimate score is developed. They're listed in numerical order, and then quartiles are established. So think of a bell curve. Your first 25% is the first quartile. That have the highest, the 25% highest scoring programs are considered the first quartile, also known as the highest alignment with the strategic plan. Follow the second, third quartile, and then the last 25% lowest scores are the lowest alignment with the strategic plan. That is not to say that they do not align with the strategic plan, but relative to the other programs that are scored, they have the lowest alignment. Does that explain the quartiles sufficiently, Mandy? Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
That speaks similar to what Commissioner Larson was speaking to when she was talking about the Prairie Park scoring a 52 or whatever it was compared to something within the police department that scored a little bit lower. That we're speaking to.
So is that sufficient for your budget update, or did you want more? That wasn't what I had planned, but I understand you have a lot to get through.
Yeah, I think just the confirmation, as we said with Craig, that the 2023 budgeting process will be similar to 2022, in which the special alcohol tax dollars will be distributed in the way that was very similar to 2022. I think gives us some direction as to what maybe our path forward potentially, or at least helping us define what our path forward might be. Unless anybody has any further questions on that or comments. Nothing? Okay. Well, no action necessary for that agenda item. I really did want to get to this one. So item 4 is our update from the Housing Division on the use of 2022 special alcohol funds.
So I'll provide this update. I did receive it from Danny Walters, who works in our Housing Division. And so as of the end of June, $261,287 have been spent from the Special Alcohol Fund. And that's been provided to Burt Nash for their homeless services that they are providing through an agreement with the city. That agreement is actually for $522,000, but only $260,000 of it has been officially paid out. Does that make sense? I don't want to cause confusion. So if I should just say the whole 500 is accounted for, I don't know how. In my world, expenditure means something different than encumbered. So what I want to be helpful to you all and make sure that it's clear. So what makes the most sense for you all to know?
So we're talking about the 2/3 that was allocated to this, what would have been to the Special Alcohol Advisory Board, and the other 1/3 to the general fund, making up the full 500. Of that 500, 206 had been spent or encumbered to Burt Nash. Is that?
Well, there was actually a budget of $800,000 of expenditures in the Special Alcohol Fund for 2022. And what I'm saying is, as of the end of June, only $261,000 has been paid out. Another 261 will go to the same vendor because we pay it in 2 increments, right? We do a first half and a second half. So if I say that we have spent 261,000, I don't want there to be a dangling carrot situation. I want it to be clear that there is another 200 that will be going to Bert Nash. So I can either say the total amount, or I can tell you what we've actually paid out. And I just want to make sure that everyone's understanding when I say what we've spent means what we've paid out.
I understand that.
Okay.
This is Kendra Johnson. I understand it. And I appreciate you taking the time to note that, there's two difference. And, it is hard with different minds around accounting systems and what's allocated out. A quick question.
Yes.
And Chris, tell me if I am stepping outside of my square, but maybe it's more like a rectangle today. But do we see a report of Bert Nash, how they spent those monies, or is that not for our vision?
Do we as the advisory board, or we as the city?
Well, if the city does, then we as the advisory board should, right?
I think this is Chris. I think that's a little bit of where we as the committee's kind of sticking point was a little bit, is that if it went to within the city funds, then our interpretation would be our purview is of those funds usage isn't necessarily, it's not within our purview to receive those reports of those funds, because it was committed to an internal department. Mandy, correct me if I'm saying what our little sticking point was.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is something that hasn't been resolved. The city's opinion that moving these funds to a city department eliminates this board's role and the oversight of the funds. So that is still something that I think needs to be addressed.
May I ask a follow-up then? This is Kim Johnson. So can we request to see how they spent those funds?
This is Chris Covert. I think we can for sure request it, and whether it's part of an ordinance or a charter, I think that's left for interpretation. I do think that that was one of my recommendations as our next agenda item is what the future role of this board to be. I do think that's something that we can help facilitate it, and our expertise that we have as an advisory board is helping kind of review the usage of those funds and whether they fit within the city's strategic plan or not, and help with just the evaluation of those funds. And that is within our ordinance, is to evaluate the use of city funds by recipients and report to the city commission. So that would be one of my recommendations to us as we move forward as a board. So fair question, Kim.
This is Casey Toomey. Bert Nash does provide a quarterly report, and the housing division is willing to share that information with all of you. And I apologize if I have misunderstood the direction of the board. I thought you all didn't want participation from our housing division. But I'm certainly willing to ask them to attend these meetings and provide that information to you all.
This is Chris. I think the concern wasn't for them to not participate, as them being the liaison, I think is what I think the advisory board had kind of pushed back on a little bit. So I think we're happy to accept their participation, but I don't think the board as a whole was wanting them to be a liaison for this committee.
Correct. I believe Dorothy had a comment.
I have a statement. This is Dorothy. Since we're advising the board and they have a strategic plan, but did they include the groups that treat substance abuse, for instance? Because I assume that's mostly where we gave the grants. Since I'm new here, I don't know all the organizations that you gave the grants to, but would it be part of our role to check and see what impact this is having on their budgets, and how it will hurt our town if they would stop doing those services or if they went under? as being a newbie, I don't know if that would be one of our roles or not.
This is Chris. I don't disagree with that. I would open up for a little bit of discussion and hear other people's opinions on that. Kim's got some expertise in this area in general, so I would happily hear what her opinion on this is.
This is Kim Johnson, and in my opinion, Dorothy, and by now that I'm slightly frank, which is why Chris loves me so much. I believe that when there's a car accident on the highway, several cars look and several cars stop, but not all of the cars that stop can help the person. Mm-hmm. We have a situation with substance abuse and homelessness in our wonderful city, but a lot of organizations putting money into it are not the best organizations to be putting money into it.
True.
So when you see something and everyone saturates it, it doesn't resolve the problem. It just throws a lot of money at the problem. Mm. So I'm very interested to look at 1 year, 3 year, 5 year reports and statistical analysis from government organizations that actually evaluate a larger population within the problem of Douglas County and hit all of the zip codes to see what has come from throwing all of this money at one problem. The Burton Ash for years has received a lot of money. Their wait lists are extremely difficult for people to get into. Mm-hmm. And I know they're also a part of a government organization that is also giving them money. So my question is going to be to see what that outcome is. I don't personally believe it is the best direction for the committee that we're serving on to pound even more money into a problem without seeing what some of the money that's been put into the problem is showing on outcomes. Did I answer your question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I would add, Dorothy, historically, whenever this started, that was some of our questions and concerns was this money was taken from what had been considered alcohol and drug abuse prevention services, and put towards homelessness services without a needs assessment or intentionality. So yeah, for sure, what you said is completely relevant and something that we've explored but not been able to get much on. In that homelessness needs assessment they were waiting on is done, but I'm not sure that it's available to the public yet. Is that right, Casey?
Right before this meeting, I was trying to look. We do think that it has been on either an AHAB agenda or a city commission agenda.
So that's it. AHAB agenda. It is. It's an AHAB agenda. That's where I was going to look.
But I apologize. I don't know that.
Thank you, Casey. And Kim Johnson again. And Dorothy, I want to add one more thing. Is through the lens of all humans, right? Where do you see the problem and what does the problem touch, right? Mm-hmm. So we know we have a substance abuse homeless problem. And so if we put the money in Burton Ash, it helps the people who go in there. But what about the people that are impacted by those that go into Burton Ash? By taking the money away from those that are impacted, children, mm-hmm. right? Other areas that need these services, these people are no longer getting, those organizations didn't get that money anymore because it went here to assist with that venue's skills.
Yeah, because if you just solve their problem, you're not solving the other problems either. You're not.
Yeah, and now you've got these kids out here not getting services, right? And what happens when they don't get services and they learn from pattern behavior? Mm-hmm. They repeat it. And then where are their services? Because then the focus of the storm has shifted.
So this is Casey. I actually wasn't finished with the update. There were some other 2022 expenditures that I wanted to make the board aware of. Not to cut off your conversation, but I'm just sensitive that we have 4 minutes left.
Yeah,
So,
I was actually going to do the same thing.
Sure,
Get
we're
back to
answering Dorothy's question because she tried to ask it a few times.
yeah.
that's what I was going to. If there's any other information or questions as it relates to the 2022 funds,
So in addition to the payment to Bert Nash, there have been dollars set aside for the Safe Bar training for which is provided by the Sexual Trauma and Care Center. That's $17,000, and then I'm sorry, I already mentioned the remaining payment that has been set aside for Bert Nash, again, for the homeless services that they provide for the city. So sorry, I just wanted to make sure that I provided the information about the Safe Bar training that's paid out of the alcohol fund.
So is there this is Chris Carr. So is there an intention or plan, or is the housing division working through how to distribute out or utilize the remaining 280,000 if we had 800 and we gave Bert Nash total of 500 and then the Safe Bar 17,000?
That's correct. There are funds remaining for needs that are identified through that houselessness needs assessment.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions or comments as it relates to the 2022 usage of the special alcohol funds at this point? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is discussion of the future role of the board. I think we've had a kind of indirect conversation about this throughout this, and we only have 2 minutes left, so I may want to table this to maybe have everybody think about what Craig said as it relates to how he viewed the future of this board, and then find a way for us to find a niche or find what we want to do. I think our role is pretty well defined within Ordinance 9726. So it may be a matter of us finding what it is and requesting an amendment to that ordinance. I'm not sure how we could, as advisory board, step into anything that's not defined within that ordinance. But
Can I share something that I've heard recently that will relate to this? I reached out to Brad Finkeldine because he is an attorney on my concerns about the language in the two ordinances and how it's being interpreted. I believe that when it says city departments, plural, it's referencing the city manager's office and Parks and Rec. It doesn't mean all city departments. And I asked that in my public comment too, that the city attorney review that. And my response from Tony Wheeler and Brad is that Tony hasn't looked at the ordinance because the commission did not direct her to. And if the ordinance does not align with how the city wants to use the funds, they will just try to change the ordinance, and that they're going to explore the advisory board roles in the fall. So I want to make sure that our time and energy is being respected by the commission and the city staff, and that this isn't just performative. So I'd like to know more about what the plans are for the fall. If the feedback from the board is going to be considered when the commission assesses all advisory boards, or if this would be performative and they're going to do whatever they want anyways. That's how I'd like to frame our conversation in the future, not today. We don't have time.
This is Chris Carr. I would agree with that. I don't want us to spend a lot of time trying to figure out how we fit into the puzzle, if it's a different puzzle. So with that in mind, I suppose we can move on to new business. Does anybody have any new business? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is public comment. So open this up to public comment if there's anybody at City Hall or anybody on the Zoom call that has public comment.
Nope, there's nobody in the room here.
Okay, so we'll end public comment and move on to the last agenda item, which is the calendar, which I do want to quickly touch on based off of what Mandy had just said. Our next meeting's is September 16th at 8:30. Do we feel that's going to work with what the kind of the trajectory of what Mandy said with the city considering possibly reevaluating the advisory boards as a whole? Do we want to keep that or push it back a month or so?
Casey, do you have any idea when Brad says, or I think Craig even said it sometime, that they're reassessing the advisory boards in the fall? What does that mean? What's the time frame on it?
At this time, I don't have any more of a detailed time frame than fall.
This is Chris Gard. The budget process, that probably wouldn't happen until after the budget process is completed, would be my guess. And we have an August 25th. Is that when the next serious deadline is for the city in the budget process?
August 23rd is the public hearing.
Okay.
This is Jeff Fry. May I?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I've been listening to this, and if we don't have anything productive to talk about on September 16th, we should probably just defer that.
This is Chris Gard. Do we want to go ahead and defer that at this point, or we want to keep it for the time being? And as we get closer, we can make a determination as to whether we have anything pertinent to speak about.
I'm reluctant to give up a meeting, and I know I hear you, Jeff, but we've really struggled in the past to get a special meeting scheduled. So I'm reluctant to give up a meeting that we have scheduled because I don't believe that we could get another one. But I know that we had talked about we want to be able to meet following the budget hearing or the budget approval. But to what end at this point, I'm not really sure. Honestly, I don't feel like there's anything to be done at this point, honestly. If the city's talking about just changing the ordinance and the board's role without a process or a date or a timeline, and that's the feedback I get when I ask about it. So I'm not sure what to do within the system if the system is not willing to.
I guess my point is, would it be a valuable use of everybody's time?
At this point, honestly, I don't think so.
Thank you.
You might want to keep it scheduled and then just cancel it within a couple of weeks in case something else would come up.
Yeah.
This is Chris Gard. I say my proposal is we leave the calendar as we currently did it, and then I'll work with Casey and Mandy that if there isn't any significant agenda items as it relates to the September meeting, we either postpone it or we'll cancel it. But most likely, what I would say is we'll probably just postpone it until we have something. Like Mandy said, I don't want to have to go through the process of doing a special meeting. We can always change the date, and we did that with this one. So I think let's leave it for now, and we'll be cognizant of and respectful of everybody's time for that meeting of whether if there's anything for us to do. Any further comment, questions on the calendar? I didn't want to cut anybody off. Hopefully I didn't short anybody as we rush through these last few agenda items.
Well done.
If nothing further, I make a motion to adjourn the.
Chair, sorry, this is Casey again. I did want to just a reminder for those of you who your terms are ending at the end of August. I believe you should have received an email. It comes from the city of Lawrence. It's an automated email that goes out to folks that said, if you're interested in being reappointed, to go ahead and reapply. So I think that applies to Dorothy, Tim Giblin, Mandy, and Chris. Just wanted to remind you that that's out there. And if you could go ahead and reapply if you are interested, or let Bobby know so that she can let the mayor know, and a new appointment can be made if you're not interested in continuing on in your service.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that, Casey. I'll re-up. I'm happy to re-up. Okay, well, if there's nothing further, I'm make a motion to adjourn the 7/22 Special Alcohol Tax Advisory Committee meeting.
Mandy Enfield, so moved.
Dorothy Hoyt Reed, second.
We have a motion and a second. Take a vote. Dorothy, how do you vote?
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
Kim?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
And Chris with an aye, so motion passes. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Casey.